So you're driving your Nissan and bam, the check engine light comes on. To make matters worse, your cruise control has decided to take an unscheduled vacation. If you've pulled the codes and found a P1564 staring back at you, don't worry, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to break down what that code really means and how you can get it fixed.
There's nothing quite like that sinking feeling when the check engine light pops on, right? And when the code scanner spits out a number like P1564, it just feels like technical gibberish. You're probably wondering, is this a big deal? Is this about to cost me a fortune? Well, let's get through that confusion and get you some straight answers.
Okay, so first things first. Before we can even think about fixing the problem, we've got to understand what the car is actually trying to tell us. Let's translate this thing from computer speak into plain English.
So on paper, the P1564 code stands for Automatic Speed Control Device Switch Out of Range Air. Yeah, I know, it's a mouthful. But the key letters there are ASCD. That's just Nissan's fancy acronym for your cruise control system.
So what does all that tech speak actually boil down to? It's really simple. We're looking at a communication breakdown. Your car's brain, the main computer, is trying to listen to the cruise control buttons on your steering wheel, but the signal it's getting is garbled or just plain wrong.
Okay, so the car's computers aren't talking right. But what does that feel like when you're behind the wheel? How do you know for sure this is your issue? Let's go over the most common symptoms.
Well, for starters, the most obvious one is your cruise control just won't turn on, flat out refuses. You might also notice the little set light on your dashboard is blinking at you, and of course, the check engine light is on. Now, because all these wires are bundled together in the steering column, you might sometimes find that other buttons, like your radio controls, are acting up too. And in some pretty rare cases, this wiring issue has even been known to cause some weirdness with the transmission.
All right, so we've got the symptoms. We know what the code is trying to tell us. Now it's time to put on our detective hats and find the culprit. Let's dig into what's most likely causing this headache.
Now, this problem usually boils down to a handful of usual suspects. Topping the list, the number one cause is a faulty switch. The actual buttons you push on the steering wheel. A very close second is a part called the clock spring. Now, that's a really clever coil of wires that lets your steering wheel spin around without tearing all the wiring for your airbag and buttons. Way down the list of possibilities are things like damaged wires somewhere else, a simple blown fuse, or a very, very rare problem with the car's main computer.
So, with a couple of likely bad guys, where do you even start looking? Well, when it comes to diagnostics, you've basically got two ways you can go about this.
Think of it like this. Path 1 is the patient, methodical approach. You grab a multimeter, you test all the wiring, and you get a precise, definite answer. It takes more time, for sure, but you'll know exactly what's wrong. Path 2 is more about playing the odds. Since the switch itself is the most common failure, and it's not a super expensive part, we're often talking less than $50, a lot of folks just replace it first and see if that fixes it. It can be a quick win, but if the real problem is that more expensive clock spring, well, you're right back where you started. Okay, let's get down to brass tacks. Whether you're planning on tackling this yourself or you just want to sound like you know what you're talking about at the garage, here's the game plan for getting this fixed. Look, always start with the easy stuff first. Before you break out any fancy tools, pop open that fuse box. Find the fuse for the cruise control and make sure it's not blown. That's a 5-minute, $2 fix if you're lucky. If the fuses look good, just take a quick peek at any wiring you can see for obvious damage. Anything that looks frayed, chewed, or corroded. And listen up, because this next part is a non-negotiable, absolutely critical safety warning. Before you even think about touching anything inside the steering column, you must disconnect the negative terminal of your car's battery, and then wait a few minutes. Why? Because the driver's airbag is in there, and you do not want to find out what happens if it goes off by accident. Seriously, this is the most important step. No shortcuts.
So, let's say the fuses are fine and you don't see any obvious wires hanging out. What's next? Well, this is where we move from a simple look-see to some more advanced electrical testing to really hunt down the problem. This is where a mechanic is going to grab a tool called a multimeter. Think of it like a doctor's stethoscope for your car's wiring. They'll use it to check the electrical signals coming from the switch as each button is pressed. By comparing those readings to the specs from the factory, they can tell with certainty if the switch is bad, if the clock spring is failing, or if there's a break in the wire somewhere in between.
All right, you found the problem, the new part is in, you can see the finish line. But hold on, don't spike the football just yet. There are a couple of crucial last steps to make sure this problem is gone for good.
Once you've actually replaced the bad part, the job's not quite done. You need to plug in a scan tool and tell the car's computer to clear the P1564 error code from its memory. If you skip this, that check engine light is just going to stay on. Then after the code is cleared, it's time for the moment of truth. Take the car for a spin. Get on a road where you can safely test the cruise control and make sure everything works just like it should. That's how you confirm the fix was a success.
And there you have it. You've taken this confusing, kind of scary P1564 code and broken it down into a simple communication problem with a clear path to a solution. Every time you figure out an issue like this, you understand your car just a little bit better. So now that you've got this under your belt, the only real question is, what are you going to learn about your car next?